Okay, so we're going to Nebraska. Well, right before we went to Nebraska, my wife at the time, she ends up getting injured on some of my equipment that I had at the house, workout equipment. Um, and she hurt herself and actually hurt her eye, and she could not drive. So I actually ended up having to drive all the way, from Texas to Nebraska. And she, couldn't hardly drive. I think she drove a little bit during the day at some point, but it was pretty rough from that point on, getting all the stuff to Nebraska and getting into Nebraska. Well, when we got to Nebraska, the house, there was somebody living in it. So that I didn't know. But it turns out they were renting it from her daughter, and her daughter had left, and we're renting the house to those people. Well, those people hadn't paid the rent in however long, so she had to get real with them and just say, okay, you're gonna have to move out. I've got other people coming in. Well, it took them a couple of days, so we had to go back to Texas again and get more stuff. And then when we came back, they were finally gone. And they were like, well, you can put stuff in the basement. Well, we looked in the basement, and there was like no room in the basement. It was like completely full, yeah, of stuff. And then, so like I said, we left and went back to Texas for a minute just to get some more stuff and come back. And then when we got back, they were gone. They were all bragging about, oh, we're moving to a house that has a big porch around it and all this kind of stuff, and so you can have this place. So it's like whatever. So we get to the place, and my wife is not very happy about the place. It's a small place. It's only about 800 square feet, and it only has that amount because somebody did some work to it. It used to be like a just a square house. It was up on a hill. It was on some good land area, in the town. But, and I liked that. I thought that was pretty nice. So you could see off a long way. But she just looked at the negative stuff. She was like, oh, well, it's too small. It's this, it's that, But like I said, somebody who done some work to it, and they made it bigger. They added some rooms, some buildings onto it. They didn't do the greatest job, but they did an all right job. It was livable. It hadn't been taken care of by the renters, of course. So we came into a sty. The carpets were all tore up, and they were indoor-outdoor carpets, and they were ripped, and there was lots of stuff wrong, and the house was musty smelling, and all this kind of stuff. So she was really angry about the house. Well, I told her, hey, we can do some stuff to it. We can clean it up. I mean, it can be cleaned. But I didn't have a job at the time because we had just come from Texas, and this is a new place, so I didn't have a job. So, we ended up going back to some of what we were doing in Texas before I got the electrical job that I got, and that was building chicken coops, because she had done that at some time, and we built some chicken coops in Texas, and we didn't do too bad at it. People were real happy, so we built some here. I made a little money, and it was all right, but we weren't making a whole bunch of money. We were paying a lot for materials, and we weren't making as much money as we should, to earn a good profit, So I started looking for a job in the town. There was only two places to work in the town, and that was at a junkyard. It was pretty close to the house, and then there was one that was a factory that was down the road. So I went to the junkyard and talked to them, and they were going to hire me. They didn't have a problem hiring me. But I also went to the factory, and they were going to hire me, and it was it was more towards who I was, even though it was a mechanic job, like my father, and he never taught me how to be a mechanic. Only time, always whenever we were doing mechanical stuff, he would yell at me because I didn't know, how to do it. But through the time that I spent with him and my grandfather a little bit, who was a the manager of a mechanic shop. So obviously you see where that came from. And my grandfather, by the way, was a good man. He was, he drank a lot like my dad did, but he was a happy drunk. He was like one of them drunks that just is like, he's always drunk. And it's Budweiser beer. um, but so he was a church man. He went to church, and he actually raised my grandfather was one of the best men in my life that I've had. Even though he was a drunk, he was a drunk. He drank beer every day, all the time. Drank it like water. But like I said, happy drunk. It eventually didn't do anything to him, I guess, because he was so bad where he would offer the kids when they came over, he would offer them beer. The grandkids. Oh, you want a Budweiser? This is when we're like 12 and 13 and stuff like that. He was just that kind of guy. He was real fun and real nice, but it was just funny that he would offer a 13-year-old kid a beer, a Budweiser. That's how much he loved Budweiser. But I do believe he's with the Lord right now, because he actually developed Alzheimer's. It's too bad. He was such a good man. But yeah, he developed Alzheimer's and at the end of his life. And it was about when I was at the end of Little Jim Rat's ministries, and God did something really great at that time with my grandfather, because he was the only one who ever really supported me on anything that I did. He saw the light in me, and he was like, okay, I like the light in you. You need to keep doing what you're doing. And he never said that, but, he pointed towards it, He accepted my ex-wife, because she was the first person I ever brought to anything, and I brought her to a wedding or something. I think it was my sister's wedding. It was the first girl I ever brought around my family at all, because girls weren't attracted to me, so I didn't bring them anywhere, any family get-togethers, nothing, no girl with me, I'd actually brought a couple of friends of mine, boys that were, that I had friends of, with me to these, family parties and things like that, and they were just friends of mine, and it was like, okay, you want to go to a party? It's my family party, but it's a party. And of course, these parties, in my family, it's all about drinking. I mean, they just drank constantly. My whole family was all about drinking, which you can see why my dad is the way he is, But, anyways, going back to my grandfather was a good man. He actually adopted my dad and his brother and sister from my grandmother, because he wasn't his original dad. He was a stepdad. His original dad was a man from Oklahoma, and he was, I'm assuming, or from what I know now, he was about just like my dad. He was the same way. And apparently my dad learned from him how to be. So that's how he was. That's what he was taught by this man. Well, my grandmother was being beaten, and, probably saying the same thing that my dad said to my mother. And so my grandmother grabbed up the three kids, and she took them to Texas, away from this man. And she found this other man, my grandfather, he was a massive man. He was in the Navy. He was big. He's probably about 6'8", big old guy. And he, but just a part of he just had a great heart, just a great man. And so he took in my grandmother, and he took in the three kids, and adopted them, and raised them as his own, So, he was a good man. Anyways, back to it. He developed Alzheimer's at the end of his life, and God did something really great through him. Is while he was at the end of his life, right about where the Alzheimer's was just about to take him home, I know, because he called me when he was incoherent. I mean, my grandmother said that he was incoherent. He wasn't anywhere near the phone. And he called me with his phone, And she said he didn't even have a phone. His phone was in a drawer somewhere. And I got a call from him while I was in my car, or truck actually, driving somewhere. And my grandfather, just plain as day, says, "Son, you are doing great. I'm so proud of you, you know." And, and then hung up the phone. And I know it's my grandfather because it said Grandpa's cell, so. And he, like I said, no one knows how that happened. No one knows, how he got the phone or how he was even talking, because he wasn't talking at the time. And then it happened again, right at his deathbed, like very close to his deathbed. Me and him, I was at his apartment, or his, he was living in a home. And so I was at that home, and he was in his, hospital bed in the home, he was still there, and my grandmother was in the kitchen, and I went over there to, be with him, and say goodbye to him. And he, just as plain as day, said to me, "I am going home now, Anthony," or Tony. They call me Tony. "I'm going home now, Tony. My mansion is ready for me." And, here in about 6 hours, he died. He was gone. So he went home with the Lord, and he had a mansion because he was a good man. Even though he drank beer, he drank Budweiser, but apparently it wasn't an idol. It seemed like it was an idol to me, but apparently it wasn't. I think he liked people more. He liked God more. He liked Jesus more. So he didn't put it over them. So anyways, so there we go. So so I was talking about my grandfather was the only one I really cared about, not about leaving, because the rest of my family, they just didn't see me the same way everybody else didn't. My one sister tried to bring me over, and my other sister tried to bring me over, but they drank. They were drinkers just like everybody else. Even their husbands were drinkers. And my one sister's husband was a really nice guy, but he was a drinker. And I mean, he was really nice to me, at least. He seemed like a really good guy, a really good dad. And then his brother, which is my other sister's husband, he was a good man. I never really had a problem with him. But they were in the world. They drank, and they went to casinos and all that kind of stuff. And and I didn't. So I mean, I was left out once again. They hunted, and I was not a hunter either. I didn't. I never had been taught to hunt by my father. I never. I didn't really have any desire to hunt. I mean, I think they did it just to get away from their wives and to shoot guns. I mean, it wasn't really. They wanted to hunt. I mean, because me, I think hunting is you're tracking down an animal, you're following its scent, its hooves and all that, hoof marks and all that kind of stuff, and then you find it, and then you shoot it, and then you eat it. That's that's hunting. But I don't think sitting up in a tree in a blind and feeding the deer all day, is hunting, or all year, and then coming down once the deer gets once the deer gets used to being there and used to coming to eat there, and then it's hunting season, and so when they go to eat, they get shot and killed. It's not really I don't really call that hunting, but that's me. Like I said, I think they went there just to get rid of just to get away from their wives and drink beer, shoot guns, stuff like that. And the people here in Nebraska are about the same way at my job, so it's not really it's not like it's a big thing. It's just, that's just what they did and what they do. And they said it's the same reason, they go there to drink, and they go to get away from their wives and shoot guns, that's what they do. It's just, apparently that's something. But anyways, so we get to Nebraska, and we have this house, and I end up getting this job at this factory as a maintenance guy, and I do that for a while, and then we fix up the house, clean it up, get it all situated, but the the way it's set up is just awful. It's just an awful way it's set up. It was, the living area was fine, living dining area was fine, but then the way the door went, it was into a hallway, and you had to follow the hallway all the way around to get the stairs, and then you had another room in the middle, and then you had another room over here that they added, that wasn't a room, and they just added like a little closet area for a closet. So I came up with a plan to fix all that, but we didn't own the house. So I didn't do that until we owned the house. So we had to live there until we paid off the rent to own of the house, which wasn't long, but it was about a year, And so we had to live there like it was. And we made the best of it. We made a little office up in the loft, and and we started to do some stuff, in ministry and stuff like that. I did, at least, and she helped me with the websites and stuff like that. And she did too. She wrote some sermons as well, and I wrote some sermons. And so it seemed like we were doing God's work. It seemed that way. And I think in the beginning, I think we were. I think she was okay with that. So now we own the house, and so I come up with an idea. Okay, I was like, okay, this is what I can do to the house to make it better. That way, whenever we do leave this house, because this house is a stepping stone for us, to a better house, to a better life, to a better ministry, to everything. So this is we're blessed for it, we're grateful for it, but like I said, this is a stepping stone. So, but we need to make it better so we can sell it and get more money off of it, than what we paid into it. So I come up with a plan and she rejects it, and I come up with another plan and she rejects it, and then finally we come up with a plan that she didn't reject, that I did, and that we did. She prepared the area, I built the room, I tore down the rooms, I built the rooms, I took the hallway out, took that room out, made it a big living room, and then the other area I made a bedroom and a master bath with a stand-up shower, and took the kitchen and took the old bathroom out of the kitchen, which was really weird, having the kitchen right by the bathroom. You had to go through the kitchen to get to the bathroom, which was just strange, and it was just a nasty bathroom. So I took that out and put in a whole new large kitchen and all that kind of stuff, and built cabinets and a pantry and all this stuff, and put in flooring, and made the one room into a dining room, and all this kind of stuff. And, so I did a lot of work to this house. We did a lot of work to this house. She prepared a lot of it, and I built it, and I did all this. And I'd never done this before. This was all, given to me by God. This is all, talent that, I had through Christ, because I had never built a house before. I had never built all this stuff. Of course, the architecture came in handy, like I said, because, like I said, it was architecture. And I knew all about that, so just because it's a God-given talent, it was something that was in my past. So we did that. In the meantime, I worked at that as a mechanic at that job, and then it turned out that I wasn't that great at the mechanic job. So I started putting in lights, which of course that's electrical. So it was like, they were all switching everything to LED lights. Well, I said, okay, well, I'll put in lights. And, I was able to do that, and I did plenty of it. And then the boss came to me and said, well, if you want to put in lights, that's fine. I got no problem with that, but you'll have to do it at night. Well, I talked to her, and she didn't want me to go to nights. So he said, well, if you don't want to go to nights, then, they have an opening over here for a mechanic. And it was across the border, which wasn't that far because this house was near the border, in another plant of theirs. And so I said, okay, well, I'll go over there because it's still days. So I went over there, and I became a mechanic over there. And that's where I'm still at now, to this very day. And that was like 5 years ago. So I was a mechanic, and then God gave me a couple of dreams during this time that I was working on this house, and I was with her. And one of the visions that I got was that I went up into a storage, or not into a store, I'm sorry, in a building you know, that, and it was like a waiting area building. And then I got this little ticket, and I looked at the ticket, and it had an S on it. And so I saw some people going and going in and going to different places, and then they called my name, and they said, "What? Give me your ticket." And I gave them a ticket, and they said, "Oh, okay, S," and they said that means saint. And I said, "Okay, all right, well." So they took me into this area, and they took me to like a little it's a hallway with a bunch different doors in it. And the one door I went into was a nursery, was a children's nursery, and there was a bunch of children in there just having a great time, having fun. And they said this is a nursery in heaven, and these are for kids who have died at a young age. And I was like, okay. They look happy, great, okay. And then I saw some really crazy things. Like I saw little baby alligators, swimming around, and I think what they said was apple juice or something like that was on the floor, and just all this kind of stuff. And it's just little baby animals, animals that normally would be aggressive, that are in this room with them. And then we went out of there and went down the hallway and went outside, and it looked just like Earth, it looked the same, but they had this control station there, and the control station, the person, the angel, I guess, there was like, watch this, and told me to look around the horizon, and I looked at the horizon, and they did something on the control panel, and the horizon changed. It was just like, went from one color to another color, and then they turned it from that color to night, and where you could just see all the stars and the planets, and all the, heavenlies, at night. And then it was daytime where we were at still, but above us was night. It was like there was like no pollution, I guess you would say, so even in the day you could see all the stars and all that. And they just turned this little panel, and that's what happened, is they just brought up all these stars, and then they brought it back up to daylight and said, yeah, we can do that at any time we want to, here. And then the vision ended. And then a little later, I got another vision from God, where they brought me up into heaven, I guess, up in another building. And basically, there were some angels there who basically we were just, talking and, laughing, and we were having a great old time. And they brought me a plate of food, and it was a Burger King food. And at the time, me and my wife, we were eating Burger King all the time. It was just something that we did because we didn't like much fast food, and Burger King was cheap, and it was decent food, we thought, So they were like, okay, well, this is your favorite food. So they gave me a Burger King burger and fries and all that, and it was great. It tasted great. And they were like, this makes you so happy. And I was like, well, it's just what we eat all the time, And they said, well, it was like, well, maybe I should have, invented Burger King. I'd be really happy. And they all laughed, and all that kind of stuff. And they said, well, you are gonna invent something, you are gonna do something, and it's gonna be an additive, and we want that to be in everything. And said, and we just want everybody to have it, the additive. And I was like, okay. I don't know how that's going to happen. I'm not a chemist. I don't know how to make because I said a food additive, because that's what we're dealing with is food. And they were like, yeah, a food additive. And I was like, I'm not a chemist. I don't know how to make a food additive. Not one bit. But hey, okay, And so, the vision ended there. They were just like, you're going to make a food additive, and you're going to be, make lots of money at it, and do whatever. And I was like, okay, whatever. You said it. All right, fine. So anyways, yeah. So there's another vision I had. And then, we go on, we, do some more stuff to the house. We add a furnace, wood fire furnace, in the basement, and we add that in there. We do some more stuff to the house. We ended up having to replace some of the roof to tin. We didn't have enough money to do the other side of the roof. We'll do that later. But we were going to do that later. But we ended up doing that. So the house, and at the very end, towards the end, I started, painting the fence and making it look nicer and all that kind of stuff. And the house wasn't looking too bad. It wasn't looking too bad, and of course, taking care of the lawn and all that kind of stuff throughout the whole time. I was doing that, all the outside work and all that. Well, it went on like that, all this time, and then all the way till about, 4 years ago, or about 1 year ago. It went about 4 years, and then about 1 year ago, things started changing. My wife got increasingly, more upset, getting more upset at me, telling me I'm doing things when I know I'm not doing them, telling me that I was crazy because I thought that I didn't do it when I did, and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, well, maybe you thought that I did, but I didn't. I know what I did. I know, and just like the Air Force thing, I didn't do that. I know the truth of what I did. I know what I did, and then she made me start thinking that I was, losing my memory and all this kind of stuff. And she agreed and told me I had Asperger's and all kinds of stuff. And, excuse me. So, and all this time, she says she's talking to God. And she said God is saying all this stuff, and this is, what is happening. And then, she got into, well, my father that I have is not my real father. It's another father. It's my dad's brother and all this kind of stuff. And that's why they hated me and all this kind of, and all this stuff. And so, and it may be true. I don't know. I don't really, it seems to me that I'm more like my dad's brother. And I told her that. And, well, maybe that's your father. It doesn't really matter. But, because it doesn't matter where we come from. God, makes us, in our mother's womb. So it doesn't really matter. We are put on a path, his path, from birth, from conception to now, and, you go through seasons throughout your life, and these are my seasons. And funnily enough, most of my seasons are 7 years. 7 years. I don't know why that is, because, as I said, I raised Luke from 0 to 7. 7 years, And it turns out, I'm with this wife, my latest wife, 7 years. Yeah, okay, we're not together anymore. Yeah, like I said, towards the end, she started getting different. She was just different. And I was going more towards Jesus and more towards God, more towards Jesus. That was the thing, because I was like, okay, I am reading about Jesus, because I read the New Testament over and over and over again, because I wrote Jesus Unraveled, The Holy Spirit had me write Jesus Unraveled. I started that while I was with her. And so I found out who Jesus was, in a right mind, because, God had cleared away all the darkness and the bitterness and the anger and all that kind of stuff, and I really saw who Jesus was, and then I was like, and what Jesus said and how you're supposed to be as a Christian, and I was like, well, I'm trying to be that. I'm not perfect, of course I have my own problems, but I at least aspire to be that, and I noticed that my wife didn't. And when I asked her about it, she was like, well, I'm more like God. And I was like, well, Jesus and God is the same person. He's his son. He says, if you see me, you see him. So that's the same person. Well, she was like, no, God is stronger. He's more aggressive and all that. And she was like, yeah, I'm aggressive. I'm this. I'm that. This is how I was raised. And like I said, she was raised that way. She was raised in a very rough and tumble household. And a lot of stuff happened to her. And I understand that. And that's the reason why I forgive her for everything, that's going on, and that's what's happened. But, she just wasn't like Jesus, and I was trying to be like Jesus, and I think God put me in her life to show her Jesus, because he did have a plan for her life to do something with me, but she just couldn't get past that whole thing where, you know, she hated the house. She hated having it being so small. She wanted lots of money and lots of power and lots of, she was like, this is too good. This isn't good enough for me. I'm tired of living in squalor and all that. But she doesn't work. She doesn't. I mean, she doesn't. She has a certain amount of money coming in, but she's tired of living in squalor. There's nothing much you can do about that. Well, I tried doing this and I tried doing that and I tried making this business and that business and God won't make it work. And I said, well, I'm not God. I can't help you with there. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, all I know is that when you're a counselor, people want to see, why that they should listen to you for counsel, and if you're not showing them anything to listen to you, then if you just come up as Joe Blow and says, okay, I'm going to counsel you, they're not going to pay anything to be counseled. And so, and that's just the truth of it, and it's just like, not like God can't do it. God can do it. He can do anything. But like I said, in the world, that's just the way it works. And she was like, oh, you're this, you're that, you're that. And it's like, I work, I go out and I work 12 hours a day, so it's like, and the work that I do, we built this house, and I tried to tell that to her, okay, we have a house, we have a car that we own, we have, land that we own, all this stuff we own, I mean, it's like, look at that and look and just stop looking at what's around you and just saying, okay, it's not good enough for me. And say, look at what you got. This is a lot of people don't have this. A lot of people rent for their entire life, and or they pay a mortgage their entire life, and they never own anything, And so, she never thought it was good enough. So, I said, I'm still writing Jesus Unraveled. I'm still doing it. Still going through the Bible, still noticing, that she's not like Jesus, and she says she's not like Jesus. She says she's like God, and that's what God. So, but anyways, so I'm like, okay, well, we're still supposed to be together. She can change, you can get God can get demons out of her, where she can do her duty for Him because she's a prophet. She needs to do her duty, Well, about that time, she was like, your work with me is done. I need, God has given me a vision, and He's going to come in, there's going to be a man that's going to come and get me who's rich and loaded, and because of my life, and He's going to rescue me out of all of this, and you're not going to be here anymore. You're going to die. You're going to die of a car wreck. And I'm like, okay.